Good evening, everyone. I'm so apologetic about the delay that's occurred. It was raining, and we had to change a venue last minute. We were waiting for people to get the message conveyed. But we'd like to start off. So first of all, my name is Sudhanshu Kaushik.
My name is Danish Amir.
And we are the co-chairs of the India and Pakistan Subcontinental Fair Conference. Now, if you followed us from the very beginning, I'm sorry I'm having to lean in. If you followed us from the very beginning, we had a grand affair where we wanted to actually have substantial conversations, whether it dealt with politics to bureaucracy to the economy that existed between the two nation states. This conference, actually, we got the inspiration from our friendship. We've been friends for the past 2 years now, and we believe that if we can be friends, then we can try to see if our both countries. Thank you so much. Now, I want to, you want to start off, and then I'll check back up. Say something.
Again, thank you so much for coming, and just a little bit about how this conference, he elaborated on it just a little bit. I'll try to explain it a little bit more in depth, and we'll introduce the conference, we'll get started. When Sudhi came to NYU, I just heard about him because of his achievements. He'd done a TEDx talk, he'd done all these things, and I wanted to meet him. I thought he was really cool. I met him, we started to hang out a lot over the summer playing chess and whatnot, and it's just, we became friends, very, very good friends, and we're not all that different. When I came in, I had this image of who people from the other country were and who we were, and when I spoke to Sudhi, it's like, we're all the same people, we have the same language, it's called different names. That's how the idea for this conference came about, and it's just, we're really hoping that it will help make you guys think a little bit more about how to move forward, how to have a dialogue, how to pave a way forward, and well, I guess that's honestly it. We hope you're as excited as we are about this conference. And, well, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns after, do let us know. We want to make this an annual thing. We want to make it so that every year we can have this conference. Every year we can try to make it bigger. Our initial idea for it was very grand. That didn't pan out as much. Right. I'll hand it over to Sudhi.
All right, thank you so much. So, we're going to begin this event by a fireside chat with Mr. Omar Abdullah and Ms. Vasuki Nisai. Ms. Vasuki Nisai, if we could get you to come up on stage, please. She graduated and got her JD and SJD from Harvard Law School. Ms. Nisai works at the Galton School of Individualized Study, and she's worked in the past at the UN and focuses on human rights framework. And now, our inaugural speaker, Mr. Omar Abdullah, just completed a 6-year term from 2008 to 2014 as the youngest Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. He currently serves as a member of Legislative Assembly in India and serves as the President of the National Conference Party. Mr. Abdullah has also served as the Minister of State for External Affairs, and we're really excited to have him here today. Thank you so much, Mr. Abdullah. And the format of this discussion will be a somewhat moderated discussion between Ms. Nisai and Mr. Abdullah, and then he wants to open it up with you for a dialogue. So please have your questions ready, and we'll get the mics to you after a 15-minute dialogue.
So, do you have any opening remarks
No,
you want to?
Look, unfortunately, with politicians, put a mic and an audience in front of us and we get extremely long-winded. Knowing as I do that there are subsequent speakers, I don't want to use up my entire time in a monologue and not get into an interaction with all of you. So I will forego the traditional opening remarks. I'm sure whatever I was going to say in my opening remarks will come up in the questions anyway. So rather than repeating things.
Okay, well maybe you can just start us off by just giving your sense of the current context in Kashmir. And
well, I think you need to look at Jammu and Kashmir, both internally and externally, because both are cause for concern at the moment. Internally, we are dealing with more than 100 now, 103, 104-day agitation. It's been described in some quarters as an uprising. It has actually been mass protests, largely rural focused, that arose because of the killing of a militant leader in an encounter with the security forces. I dare say that our own handling of the situation post that militant's death was less than ideal, giving rise to where we find ourselves now, which is 100+ days of no schools, little or no commercial activity, and unfortunately no end in sight to the current problem. Coupled with that, you now have heightened tensions between India and Pakistan, and that obviously adds to the mood of gloom in the valley, because no state more than Jammu and Kashmir suffers on account of a downturn in relations between India and Pakistan. We had looked very optimistically at some of the steps that Prime Minister Modi took after assuming office, particularly his immediate outreach to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, inviting him for his swearing in. Then you had talks in various parts of the world. You had the national security advisors, you had foreign secretary, foreign minister level talks, but all of that got sort of trumped by the Prime Minister making an impromptu visit to Lahore to attend a family function of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. So that developed a lot of sort of hope that we would be able to address this problem, because it is a problem that needs addressing. You are going to hear towards the end of this evening from Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, and his views and mine on what the solution could possibly be will differ. But I think we'll both agree that it is a problem that needs resolution. It's a cause of friction between India and Pakistan. We've been to war 4 times since 1947. We have been unable to agree on what the final sort of contours of that solution should look like. I was actually pleased to hear and subsequently disappointed to hear that General Pervez Musharraf was not going to be part of this function, because I think hearing from him would have been important, because no Pakistani leader, in at least my memory, has gone as far as he has done in trying to move away from the status quo. It was a dialogue that progressed well, both with Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, but unfortunately was inconclusive, and that's why we are where we are today. So I firmly believe that both internally within Jammu and Kashmir, we need a dialogue to resolve the problem. It's a political problem. Let nobody tell you that it's an economic problem, it's a job-related problem, it's an education-related problem, because it isn't. Yes, there are elements of joblessness, there are elements of social problems. I dare say there are elements of radical Islam, but those are the minority elements in it. Largely, it is a product of the politics of Jammu and Kashmir. It's a product of 1947, it's a product of 1953, it's a product of 84, and as we go along, I'll try and explain what these dates mean. But it is a political problem that requires a political solution, which needs dialogue. And similarly, at some point in time, one hopes that relations between India and Pakistan will, to an extent, normalize. That will allow for a sustained dialogue, and then we can start talking about the various problems that shadow our relationship. And of course, Jammu and Kashmir will be one of them.
So, given the sort of deep alienation of the citizenry of Jammu and Kashmir from the Indian government at the moment, just as you say, with over 100 days of agitation, what would, if you were able to advise the Indian government about what they could do firstly in the short term and then in the long term?
Well, I guess in the short term, recognizing the problem, admitting that we have a problem. See, unfortunately, in various quarters, we have decided that we want to deny that a problem exists. And even if we do accept it as a problem, we don't want to accept that it is a political problem requiring political handling. And therefore, we will talk about it in terms of jobs and training as a social problem, as I said, as a law and order problem. But while it has elements of all these, at its basis, it is a political problem. And unless there is a long-term sustained dialogue, it will not go away. These uprisings, these agitations, they keep emerging. We saw them in 2008, we saw it in 2010, we're now seeing it in 2016. I dare say, as we go on, unless we actually address this problem, these uprisings, these agitations will keep taking place. So right now, just the acceptance that a dialogue is necessary and a dialogue with all those stakeholders who are willing to talk to you. Look, I understand that there has never been a government, nor will there ever be a government elected in India that will have a mandate to redraw territorial lines. That is not going to happen. So we understand that a solution to the problem of Jammu and Kashmir must lie within the constitution of India and the constitutional relationship between Jammu and Kashmir and India. But that constitution affords you enough flexibility anyway, because please understand, unlike other states which acceded, princely states which acceded into the Union of India in 1947, Jammu and Kashmir did under very different circumstances, wherein the Union of India was only responsible for currency, communication, defense, and foreign affairs. Everything else was the domain of the state. So where the Constitution affords you such flexibility, I'm sure that as a result of a long-term dialogue, we will be able to find a solution that works not only for the state of Jammu and Kashmir, but for India as a whole. So yes, short-term, accept that there is a problem, accept that the problem requires a sustained dialogue, and then obviously in the medium to long term, that dialogue reaching a certain conclusion. In the past, we've had sort of on-again, off-again initiatives, whether it's the appointment of interlocutors, whether it is the roundtable conferences, various other initiatives have been taken by governments at the center at various points in time. Lots of promises have been made. Almost every prime minister has made promises to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in the last 25 to 30 years, that have not been fulfilled. So you had Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who famously said, short of Azadi, the sky is the limit. You then had Atal Bihari Vajpayee Sahab, who from the ramparts of the Red Fort, 15th August, said that previous mistakes in Kashmir will not be repeated. Similarly, you've had encouraging words from Dr. Manmohan Singh and recently from Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji as well. So it's I think what the people of Jammu and Kashmir are looking for is those words being converted into some sort of action on the ground.
Line of control as a political boundary and just apply law and order around that.
Yeah, maybe actually I wonder whether we should have can we have a system for questions?
Yes, of course.
So that
Sure. Look,
if
as
there,
I get, you're basically saying that the line of control becomes the de facto border. Look, I mean, sure, logically that would make the most sense. Do we have governments in India and Pakistan that can take that decision? I mean, as I said, General Musharraf moved away from the status quo. In fact, his 4-point solution actually was built somewhere loosely around that. The fact that Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and then Dr. Manmohan Singh were willing to engage with him on that means that there was at least some scope for forward movement around that. Any solution that takes place, that works, is going to be a solution that affords both countries the opportunity to say that they have won, and neither country the opportunity to turn around and say that the other one lost. So neither India or Pakistan, is going to be in a position to claim victory out of this solution. If that works, then nothing like it. My father has often said that this is the only logical solution that will work. And if you step away from the jingoism and all the rest of it, logic would dictate that that really is the only solution.
can I ask you to put up your hands if you have questions right in front? Yeah.
The demographic of Kashmir be improved if Article 370 was revisited and you could get Indians to actually be allowed to buy property and settle in Kashmir. Indians of all different religious faiths, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, because at the moment it's skewed.
Well, first, the basic premise of your question is wrong, but I'll come to that later. What you're advocating is a Chinese model of a solution to what they did in Tibet. Basically flood the area with non-Tibetans. So that Tibetans, no, let me finish, because that's the understanding I get. You basically flood the area with non-Tibetans, so that Tibetans are reduced to a minority, and then the problem goes away. So what you're suggesting is that you allow people from the rest of the country to buy land in Jammu and Kashmir, to the point that bona fide residents of Jammu and Kashmir are then a minority, and the problem goes away. Now, if that is the solution that you want to impose on the state of Jammu and Kashmir, fine. You'll effectively convert the majority into the minority, and the problem will go away. But the point I made in the beginning is that the basic premise of your question is flawed, and that is that Article 370 is what stops you from buying property in Jammu and Kashmir, right? Not true. Article 370 is the constitutional provision that links Jammu and Kashmir to the rest of the country. Article 370 is not what stops you from buying land in Jammu and Kashmir. What stops you from buying land in Jammu and Kashmir are the state subject laws, which are not a product of post-independent India. In fact, if anything, they are a product of pre-independence India. They were introduced by the Maharaja on the advice of the people of Jammu, because they were worried that rich Punjabis were going to sweep in and buy up all the fertile agricultural lands in Jammu and convert them into a minority. Now that is a historical fact that we continue to uphold today. Changing the demography isn't going to solve your problem.
All I'm saying is that Kashmiris, like anyone else in India, can buy land or settle.
Not true.
in other parts
Not
of the
true.
country.
Not true.
Kashmir-
You can't buy land in Himachal. You cannot buy land in Lakshadweep. There are northeastern states that have similar state subject laws. So it's not as if Jammu and Kashmir is unique. The problem is that Jammu and Kashmir's state subject laws have sort of confused with the problem of terrorism that we're having. Nobody had a problem with Article 370, well, at least non-political people. The BJP has had an issue with Article 370 right from the beginning. That's a different matter. But otherwise, the general population wasn't overly concerned about Article 370 until 1989-90. It's only the advent of terrorism that brought Article 370 to the fore for most people. But changing Article 370 is constitutionally, Dr. Swami is a lawyer, he'll probably better be able to explain this to you. To my limited understanding, to change or to scrap Article 370 will require you to recall the Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly is what cemented the relationship between Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the country. Do you want to reopen that chapter today?
My
The
apologies.
gentleman in a t-shirt back there, yeah.
Yes, that's my question. So what are your thoughts, or, any proposals on bringing the Kashmiri Pandits who are native to Jammu Kashmir back after they've been, pretty much kicked out?
Look, Jammu and Kashmir is incomplete without them. Obviously, a solution to Jammu and Kashmir will have to include the return of all those people who left. At least most right-thinking people, they understand that Kashmiri Pandits didn't leave of their own accord. They left because their sense of security was snatched away from them. They will not come back unless that sense of security is restored to them. So obviously, it is the duty of the government of the day, whether my government previous to this or Mehbooba Mufti Sahiba's government now, together with the central government, to work towards restoring that sense of security. I still believe that maybe not everywhere, but there are large parts of the valley where Kashmiri Pandits can begin the process of returning. It's a question of some of them at least taking that step, because even today, 20 plus years into this turmoil, this is the 26th year now, you still have Kashmiri Pandits that live in the valley. Obviously much smaller populations that did prior to 1989, but they live together with Muslims and Sikhs, and they are small pockets of what we like to call Kashmiriyat. It's not as vibrant as it was, but certainly no solution to the problem of Jammu and Kashmir will be complete unless we can bring these populations back.
if you'll indulge me for a minute, I see some hands, but I want to first give at least two more students an opportunity to ask questions before we go beyond students. So I don't know whether you are a student, but you look like you could be in my class. So.
All right. My question is that UN monitored referendum. Is it a viable solution? Is it a practical solution, or is it not?
Well, I assume if when you're saying UN monitored, it will be under the framework of the Security Council resolutions. Now, to this date, I fail to understand why we in India have been so apologetic about the fact that this UN-mandated referendum never took place. Because the onus wasn't on India to create the conditions for that referendum. If you read the United Nations Security Council resolution, it lays out steps that have to be fulfilled for such a plebiscite to take place. The first step that is mandated by the United Nations is that Pakistan must vacate from all territories that it has come to occupy after 14th, 15th August 1947, and it must remove its regular as well as irregular forces from the territorial boundaries of Jammu and Kashmir. Subsequent to that step, then India has to scale down, not withdraw, only scale down to a manageable level its presence in Jammu and Kashmir. Thirdly, then the plebiscite commission will be set up and the public opinion will be sought. Now, when Pakistan was unwilling to fulfill step 1, how is it India's responsibility to fulfill step 2? Obviously, what India does is subsequent to what Pakistan does. And Pakistan never withdrew, so India never had to. But for some reason, all these years, we have allowed the world to believe that somehow the people of Jammu and Kashmir have been denied their right to choose because India chose to deny them that right, which is not true. So historically, we have a stronger case for what happened in Jammu and Kashmir than Pakistan does. But internationally, if you talk to people, they will always believe that if the people of Jammu and Kashmir were denied the legitimate right, it was because India denied them that right, which is not true. Now, can such a solution take place today? I don't know. The reason I'm saying that is because the territory of Jammu and Kashmir no longer resembles what it did on the night of 14th, 15th August 1947. In that respect, Government of India has been absolutely blameless. Our territorial boundaries have not changed. No government in Delhi has tinkered with, we've had problems obviously with regard to their relationship with state governments, but they've not tinkered with state boundaries. The boundary of Jammu and Kashmir is exactly as it was in 1947. Pakistan can't say the same. Whether it is the northern areas, whether it is Aksai Chin, whether it is other parts, they have tinkered with the territorial boundaries, they've tinkered with the demography. So when the state of Jammu and Kashmir doesn't look like it did in 1947, how are those United Nations Security Council resolutions applicable today? They aren't.
So one more student, maybe a young woman who, if she hasn't spoken, no? Okay, so, okay.
What is the role of state government? Because you were in power in Jammu and Kashmir for almost like 10 years, and at that time, Congress was the government of India. So, was there a time at that point, can a solution be achieved for Kashmir, Jammu, and between India and Pakistan, that relation could be normal, people can live happily?
Well, obviously the state government's role vis-a-vis India and Pakistan is very limited. To suggest that the state government has an ability to influence or direct how the government of India deals with Pakistan would be an exaggeration. But yes, to the extent that a state government can continue to try and impress on the central government to look at the internal problem, sure, of course. Whether it was my government and it wasn't 10 years, it was 6, but that aside, we did have some initiatives at that time. Whether it was, as I said, the appointment of the interlocutors, the roundtable conferences, the working groups that were appointed, they've all come up with very good, meaningful recommendations, both political, economic, there are social recommendations, there are security-related recommendations, there are recommendations with regard to some of the laws that apply to Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, etc. So those were initiatives that were taken. It's a matter of regret, particularly for me, that they weren't taken to fruition I think that's one of the reasons why we face the problem that we do in the valley today. It's because we only notice Jammu and Kashmir when it's in trouble. When things are peaceful, when tourists are coming in large numbers, when things are relatively calm on the surface, we tend to forget that Jammu and Kashmir actually is an area that is troubled and needs to be resolved.
Is over there? Yeah.
You just mentioned that people don't really recognize that Pakistan has not given up the territorial areas of Jammu and Kashmir. Are you referring to Muzaffarabad and all?
Well, I was talking within the context of the Security Council resolution, yeah.
And you also mentioned the northern areas, like Skardu, Munda Valley,
Yes.
those areas? Because I'm from Azad Kashmir.
Right.
And I refuse to accept that Pakistan Army or the Pakistan government has taken over that territory because people are very happy and peaceful. There's never been bloodshed. I was there until the age of 13. I grew up in Azad Kashmir. Last year I went to the Humza Valley. Last year I went to Skardu. I went to the Pakistan-China border. I barely saw any Pakistan Army. I definitely did not see Army on the streets trying to control people or beat up people. So I think the Azad Kashmiris on the Pakistan side of the border are very happy and we live
Well,
in
I'm really,
refuse to accept.
okay, so is there a question or is this a statement of
Well,
fact?
I wanted to know if you were referring to Azad Kashmir because in that case I disagree with you.
Well, you're free to disagree with me, and that's the beauty of events like this. I don't expect to convert all of you to my line of thinking by the end of this evening, and I don't expect to have my sort of thought process radically altered as a result of this. But look, if you're happy there, great. I'm really pleased for you. I'm also really pleased for the fact that the export of terror has been in one direction. The fact that you don't have security. No, I'm sorry. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. So let me finish. The export of terror has been in one direction. The terror camps aren't operating in my side of Kashmir, sending them to your side. They're operating on your side of Kashmir, coming across to my side. Your politicians are not facing attacks on their lives because of what we are doing. I am. I've had family members that have died on account of the terrorist camps that are operating on the other side of the line of control. I've had colleagues that have been killed. I've had colleagues in the thousands that have died on account of terror that has been exported from your side of Jammu and Kashmir. So please don't tell me how happy you are, because you're happy because we're not interfering in your day-to-day life. Okay? So sure,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Can you control the Kashmiris from the Indian side from stopping to come into the Azad Kashmir to get that training? Why can't you stop those people from crossing the border into Pakistan to get the training?
Look, to a large extent, we have stopped them.
But why are the Kashmiris on the Indian side so unhappy that they feel the need to come into the Pakistan to get training? That's my
Look, there is every place will have a disaffected population. It depends how many people want to take advantage of it. Look, Jammu and Kashmir is not the only state where there will be an element of disaffected people. Every state in the country and every country in the world will have groupings of disaffected people. The only difference for us is that in Jammu and Kashmir, our disaffection is taken advantage of on both sides. But largely in the last 25 years, with this sort of support to militancy and terrorism. Look, I have no problem with Pakistan claiming to give ideological and political and all the other support. That's fine. Look, you have a position on Jammu and Kashmir, so be it. My problem is when that support isn't just political and ideological, when that support actually manifests itself on violence in the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. And look, we can build walls, we can build fences and all the rest of it, but you can't chain people to their homes, so some people will find a way to get across, and that's a sad fact, but it is also a fact that the people who are coming across from Pakistan are not only Kashmiri. I would understand if it was 100% local indigenous Kashmiris who are doing this, but at last count, if my information is still correct, we've had 16 different nationalities of militants that have come across from that side. We've had Bosnians, we've had Sudanese, we've had Brits, we've had Chechens. We've had, as I said, 16 different nationalities. So it's not just Kashmiris that have been taken advantage of. In the name of this global jihad, you've sent a whole lot of other people as well to create trouble in our neck of the woods. But that's our cross, and we continue to bear it.
I hate to interject, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah. Good.
We respect your opinions, but please wait until the mic is handed to you, whether from me or my colleague over there. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Recently in the news, and we've heard a lot from politicians, especially in the BJP, who've been saying that tensions are now very high and that we're at a point where we're ready to retaliate, even if we won't be the ones to instigate the violence. To what extent do you think this is true? Are we really at a point where we're at the brink of a huge war?
No, I don't believe we are. I believe that the government of India has been very careful in moderating how it has sold what they've called the surgical strikes to the rest of the world. I'm not going by the discussions in TV channels or some of the other more strident tones that have been taken. If you go just by the briefings that the government of India has given to diplomats stationed in Delhi and also to influential people in some of the more powerful capitals around the world, they've been very careful in how they explain what they've done post the Uri militant attack. And what they've told the world is that this was an anti-terrorism operation conducted in the vicinity of the line of control. They have not gone into how far in they went, how many people they killed, whether they were terrorists or Pakistani army regulars. So I think what that has allowed is for an opportunity or for a sort of a more nuanced response on the part of Pakistan. I dare say if the Prime Minister of India had stood up and said, well, we went 4 kilometers in and we shot 60 people and we killed so many Pakistani army regulars and so many irregulars, there would have been enormous pressure on Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to retaliate in some way. And once that retaliation had started, there's no telling where it would have ended. But the fact that the government of India has been very moderated in how it has gone out and explained to the rest of the world what it has done has allowed for, I think, a more reasonable response from Pakistan. Yes, there is some tension along the international border and along the line of control. The ceasefire is under a bit more pressure than it was at the same time last year. But I'm not one of those who sees imminent war looming in the subcontinent. I'd like to believe that both governments in New Delhi and Islamabad are a lot more careful about the prospect of war than perhaps some of our television channels would like them to be.
My question is, what do you think the future of Kashmir?
Oh gosh.
A small question.
You know, if 25 years ago, as a fresh out of college student, you had asked me where I see Kashmir 25 years from now, I wouldn't in my wildest dreams have thought that I'd be sitting here in NYU still discussing Kashmir from within the sort of context of terrorism. I mean, I don't think any of us would have been sort of comfortable with the realization that we would have this problem for 25 years, because we were looking at it from the context of Punjab and the few years that it lasted there, and we thought, chalo, 2 years, 4 years, 5, 6, maybe 7, a decade at the most. But here, 2.5 decades later, and this is all we're discussing about Jammu and Kashmir. I would like to believe that 25 years from now, we won't still be discussing Jammu and Kashmir from a context of violence. That having been said, who knows? I mean, this is a problem that has vexed both India and Pakistan and its tallest leaders since 1947. And every time we have come close to a solution, somehow or the other events have conspired and that solution has been snatched away from us. And this is, I mean, history is replete with such examples, both internally, but more importantly, externally. So I'd like to believe that if not today, tomorrow, leaders both in New Delhi and Islamabad will realize that this is a problem that needs to be put to bed. This is a problem for which a solution needs to be found. and they will look around the world and they will see areas like Ireland, they will see areas like Colombia, where 30, 40-year militancy-related problems have led to dialogues and accords, and perhaps something positive for Jammu and Kashmir on both sides of the line of control will come out of this last 25 years of turmoil.
If I can interject and ask a question, I mean, as a Sri Lankan, we also had, as you know, 30 years of war, and now, although the war is over, a lot of the scars of war remain, and Sri Lanka is now undergoing various kinds of discussions about truth commissions, prosecutions for human rights violations, reparations. I mean, staying with that young man's question about perhaps an optimistic tomorrow where there's the conflict has been the past, what kinds of things do you think are?
Well, I've actually been an advocate of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I talked about this even before I came into government in 2008, 2009, because I believe that there are, as you said, too many scars, too many wounds, too many unanswered questions that need resolution. But that Truth and Reconciliation Commission will require an enormous amount of cooperation on the parts of the government of India and Pakistan, because the answers to these questions don't lie exclusively on our side of the line or exclusively on the other side of the line. There are questions about the support to militancy. There are questions about the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. There are questions about the targeting of political workers. There are questions about the enforced disappearances of youngsters in Jammu and Kashmir who were picked up by the security forces. There are more questions than there are answers today. But we will never be able to achieve closure unless we answer those questions. I'd like answers to some of these questions. I'd like to know why the Kashmiri Pandits were driven out. What was the necessity for that? I'd like to know why, where are all those people who are counted as disappeared? What happened to the husbands of all those half-widows? Look, in 25 years of terrorist violence, are you telling me not a single one died in the training camps in Pakistan? They're not all victims of India's security forces. They're not all victims of human rights excesses. So we need somebody who can deliver the answers to these questions. Now, I understand that a Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a post-conflict sort of measure. But how long do you wait? I mean, do you wait until the absolute last gun has gone silent? Because that may be a very long wait. And possibly this is an interim measure that will actually allow you to come even closer to a final solution. Who would you find to head such a commission? I don't know. Is there a person who will instill confidence on both sides of the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir? Somebody who will have the confidence of both the governments of Islamabad and New Delhi. To this day, when I've thought about this question and asked myself, well, if I had to put somebody as the head of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, who would I put? I can't think of a name. At one point, when I thought of this earlier, the only name that sprung to mind was Nelson Mandela. But he isn't around any longer. No, honestly. Because he can't be an Indian and he can't be a Pakistani. Because one side or the other will not trust them. So we need to look beyond. I don't know whether there is somebody, but I'd like to believe that that is something that will help us to achieve closure.
Hi, I'm here. Way in the back.
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Sorry, the lights are a little bright.
It's all right. My question is regarding Burhan Wani. So, do you want to call him a terrorist or a militant? And there's a second part. If you want to call him a militant, are you comfortable with Indian government from BJP calling him a terrorist?
You know, I mean, I'm sorry, even though English is one of my first languages, I'm not as comfortable with the language as to be able to sit down here and have a conversation with you as to what differentiates a militant from a terrorist. As far as I'm concerned, no, seriously, as far as I'm concerned, he was a chap who had picked up the gun. He was a chap who had decided to declare war against the state. And whether he was a militant or a terrorist, that's for you to decide. I have, no disagreement with the BJP for whatever they call him. I have disagreements with the state government and the central government for how they handled the fallout of his death. the contradictory and conflicting voices that emerged from the state government, the fact that responsible ministers called it a custodial killing, thereby inflaming passions in the valley. A member of parliament from the ruling alliance suggesting that Burhan Wani was killed by the police to embarrass the chief minister. The chief minister herself saying that if they had known it was Burhan Wani in the house, they wouldn't have killed him, they would have given him a second chance. The deputy chief minister in Jammu and Kashmir, a BJP member, suggesting that Burhan Wani was killed by mistake and his death was not intended. None of this helped cool tempers on the ground in the valley. So my problem isn't so much with what you call Burhan Wani. My problem is with the dealing with the situation post Burhan Wani's death. And that's why where we are today. Look, put it into context. Burhan Wani as a figure in Jammu and Kashmir was not nearly as mythical as the figure of Afzal Guru. But when Afzal Guru was executed, you didn't have a 105-day-old agitation that resulted in 90 deaths. So there has to be something to be said for the way in which the state government and the central government unfortunately handled the post-Burhan Wani encounter. No, your question was, what do I call him? And as I said, my English is not good enough for me to be able to actually tell you what the difference is. So, I mean, I'll just be honest and tell you that I don't know what I would call him.
I should also say that, for international human rights, it doesn't matter whether you call him a militant or a terrorist. If it's an extrajudicial killing, it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a violation of international law in a very straightforward and straightforward way. So.
I'm a student at NYU, and first I'd like to tell you what the difference between a militant and a terrorist is. A militant can be anybody who picks up arms for any cause that they
Sorry, a militant can be anybody.
who picks up arms if
Right.
for a cause, any cause. You
Right.
and I, we might disagree with it. Any cause that they believe in. A terrorist, on the other hand, is somebody who basically practices or who basically violence in order to
But isn't the militant who's picked up arms also practicing violence then?
Isn't the Indian Army, last time I checked, the party that picked up arms in a month-long curfew that basically...
No.
That's
Now
not
we're getting
90,
into
not
different
90.
arguments.
And
Now
by the way, I also
you're
have-
suggesting that the Indian Army is a militant.
Okay, no. The Indian, it's basically, I think it's sanctioned murder. That's what I personally believe. For a curfew that lasted over a month, and
No,
I'm
as
sorry,
I
but
said,
you
I have disagreements with the way in which
I'm
the
sorry, but
situation
you-
was handled.
I'm sorry, but you also misquoted the figure. It's not 90. The casualties were in thousands, first of all. I think it's the Indian media that reported, so the Times of India. First of all, my question, though, is...
No, sorry, your figures are wrong. Injuries in the thousands, yes. Deaths, no.
I think...
No, let him finish,
shouldn't.
because otherwise he'll feel that we're trying to silence him. Sure.
So, I didn't want to jump to my question, but okay. So, you kept mentioning the right that the international community believes that the Indian government has not granted to the Kashmiri people, right? This right that we're talking about is the right to self-determination. You didn't mention what right it is. And in the subcontinent...
No, because
wait a second.
the question was asked in the context of the plebiscite, so that was understood that it's self-determination.
If you just let me finish. In the context of Kashmir, the only manifestation of the right to self-determination that has been given to the Kashmiri people is being practiced on the Pakistani end. Last time I was in Kashmir was July. I was in Muzaffarabad, and they were having elections going on. We
all know how good those elections were.
They were actually... wait a second. Wait. And just around that time, the Indian Army was a month later or so, the Indian Army had...
Okay, sorry, I get your point. Look, if elections are your barometer for assessing public mood, then in the last elections in Jammu and Kashmir, there was a turnout of more than 60%. In the regional panchayat elections, a panchayat is our grassroots rural model of governance. In the parliament elections?
Sir.
71%. So fine. I mean, we had a 60+% turnout in the parliament elections. In the assembly elections, it was even higher. And in the panchayat elections, it was more than 90%. more than 90% of rural Jammu and Kashmir turned out to participate in elections. So if the elections, look, I have never used elections as a barometer for public mood. But if you want to use elections to determine what the public think, then in rural Jammu and Kashmir, more than 90% of the population turned out and voted. Beat that.
Okay, moving on to the
Do
next
they, one
question.
sec, sorry, I'm quite happy to get into this tutu meme with him. Do they have what? I can't hear him. What? One sec, sorry. Do they what? That's a fact. It's on paper.
One of the prerequisites is that both sides of the government, both sides of the board, will grant the people of Kashmir on both sides of the line.
One sec, sorry. You know, have you read the United Nations Security Council resolution? Please Google it and read it. There are 3 points in it. And the first step is that Pakistan must withdraw all, not some, all its regular and irregular forces from the territorial boundaries of Jammu and Kashmir. The territorial boundaries, which is the territory that existed on the night of 14th, 15th August 1947. Once Pakistan has withdrawn all, then India will reduce its number to a manageable level, not withdraw, reduce. Subsequent to that, then the plebiscite will take place. When you never withdrew, why would we reduce? So that's why I've always said that the onus was first on you to give us that right to self-determination. You are the ones who denied Jammu and Kashmir that right. Obviously then India, when you didn't withdraw, they didn't reduce and we are where we are today. So please don't blame the government of India for all the ills that have befallen the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I have a number of grievances with what has happened in Jammu and Kashmir. But on this one major point, I'm sorry, but first and foremost, the responsibility was of the government of Pakistan, subsequently of India. But you can continue to argue this however you like.
All right, moving on. The last few questions because Mr. Abdullah does need to leave, so.
Recently in India, there's been a trend of a little hyper-nationalism going on. Vis-a-vis Kashmir, what's the effect, what does the common Kashmiri think about it?
Well, obviously it's a matter of some concern because the space to disagree is shrinking. Now, I'd like to believe that democracy in India is vibrant enough to tolerate views that may not necessarily be popular. I'd like to believe that Dr. Swami and I can sit down and have a discussion on Jammu and Kashmir and agree to disagree and not be called anti-national for it. His solution may differ from mine, but fundamentally we agree that Jammu and Kashmir acceded to India. That's not going to change. So, you know, this binary that we have, that it's either my way or the highway, that George Bush school of thinking that you're either with me or you're against me. Now, this is largely made up, unfortunately, because of our television channels. I mean, you have Fox here, we have a couple there that find it very easy to pigeonhole people. I mean, if you don't agree 100% with the anchor, then you're anti-national, and that's it. There's no middle ground there. And that is worrying. It's not just worrying for me from a Jammu and Kashmir context. It's worrying for me from an overall sort of context of the country, because India is too large and too diverse to have one single thought process cutting across everybody. I mean, our states differ, our languages differ, our cultures differ, our religions differ, our thought processes differ. At the end of the day, we're all Indian. That fundamental point will remain the same, but a lot of other things will be different. But unfortunately, that space to differ, that space is shrinking, and we're being weighed in very narrow sort of contexts as to what makes an Indian and what doesn't. I mean, the fact that I want autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir is somehow seen as anti-national. The fact that I'd like to see a sustained dialogue someday between India and Pakistan is seen as anti-national. I mean, they're saying, I'd like to see more space for this sort of debate, discussion. As I said, I don't expect to convert all of you. I don't expect you to convert me, but we can disagree. The gentleman at the back, he and I disagree on India and Pakistan. The lady and I disagree on how happy people on this side of the line of control are, on that side of the line of control are. But we're not sort of shouting each other down. I mean, I don't respect her any less because I disagree with her, or I don't respect him any less. So I'd like to believe that in India as a whole, we can have these sort of discussions without trying to pigeonhole each other into narrow segments of you're a nationalist or you're anti-national. And to the extent that this debate obviously filters down on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir, obviously it has an impact. Take a couple more.
Couple more, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I think a little while ago, hi, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I think a little while ago, you
How long have you been preparing this question? Yeah, I got warned about this yesterday. Go on.
So, a while ago you cited Colombia as an example for people that have succeeded with opening dialogue with the militants that are threatening their democracy. But the way we looked at it, at least here recently in school, is that that made a complete mockery of that democratic system by using the method that the means justify the ends and then forming a peaceful end with a militant means. So I'm just trying to understand what kind of...
But wasn't that the same as in Northern Ireland as well? Didn't they use militant means? But then, I mean, the fact that militant means have been used is a given. If they hadn't been used, you wouldn't have been sitting at the table talking to them, right?
When I say that it made a mockery of democracy, I mean that a very small minority superseded the majority in getting their point across, and the majority had no option but to side with that minority and give up their rights within the democracy because of fear. But I'm getting to the main question right now, which is what kind of dialogue do you think is necessary for us to sustain democracy and create a coexisting, happy society within militants, non-militants, within a secular democracy?
Look, you can't create a happy sort of society with militancy active and present. It's just not possible. Look, we've had 25 years of turmoil and violence. You haven't had a happy society. The fact that their number is relatively small, sure, that may well be the case. But their ability to create trouble is far out of proportion to their actual number. And it wouldn't bother me so much if it was just a handful of militants with absolutely no support on the ground in the valley. But the fact is that there is a disaffected population that has to be brought into the mainstream. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that you have to open a dialogue with all militant groups. That's not possible. But there are political elements within the valley that don't advocate the cause of violence, that are looking for a solution beyond the current status quo. Why not talk to them? I'm not saying that you have to enter into a Colombia-style dialogue with FARC or a Northern Ireland-style dialogue with the IRA. I mean, unfortunately, the militant organizations in Jammu and Kashmir are far too fractured, and also they take their command from elsewhere for you to be able to sit down and talk to them right now. But at least, as I said, the disaffected population of reasonable people who are willing to sit down and talk to you, talk to them. What's the harm? We have done it in the past. There isn't a government from Atal Bihari Vajpayee Sahab's government's time that hasn't had some sort of dialogue with these disaffected elements in Jammu and Kashmir. So what I'm advocating is not new. Prime Minister Vajpayee even went further and opened a channel of communication with the Hizbul Mujahideen, which is the largest indigenous Kashmiri militant organization. So what I'm suggesting is not reinventing the wheel. It's just sort of accepting that there is a problem and then talking about it.
So perhaps following the Colombia example, I mean, as you say, it may not, the peace process may not unfold similarly in Kashmir and there are different kinds of actors, but are there, in that process, one of the most critical elements was having international brokers of various kinds who both parties respected in some debating.
Well, I think
the Vatican, Cuba, and behind the scenes, the US. I mean, there was a...
Well, government of India has had a very, very clear position on this, that we are happy to accept facilitation, we will not accept mediation. and all through the years in our problems with Pakistan, while from time to time different countries have facilitated, we've had dialogues in Tashkent, you had President Clinton, who intervened famously during the Kargil conflict. From time to time, various other administrations have stepped in. Facilitation is something that we're not uncomfortable with. Actual mediation, I think, makes government of India, and this is cutting across party lines, extremely uncomfortable. I think it's also this belief that you won't find an honest broker. That it's impossible to find a country that will treat both India and Pakistan equally. So that's probably why these two countries will have to do it themselves. Obviously, on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission side, you need to find an individual. But otherwise, taking one type of solution and assuming that it will automatically apply to another, whether it's the Palestinian, the Irish one, Sri Lanka, or now Colombia, there are elements that can be sort of used, but not entire solutions.
I'm sorry, sir.
Sudhi has
take one last one. He's had his hand up for a while. Sorry? Against Universal?
The Uniform Civil Code, I think.
No, I've obviously we're not in favor of it. My party has taken a very strong position on the fact that we are not votaries or advocates of a uniform civil code, and that won't change.
No.
No, sure. Let him. Yeah, okay, you get the last one. You had an actual question last time also, I think. Wow, you have a punchline. Is it anything like Trump's and Hillary's punchlines yesterday? Go ahead, sorry, I'm just being...
Obviously it would be filtered. But you said that since somebody else is pulling the strings, we all know who that is. As I'm assuming that you're pointing to the Pakistan Army. What if you admitted that it's the Pakistan Army presently back in the 90s during Kargil that has been pulling the strings all this time? Why I believe that the leadership of the Pakistani Army right now would actually be willing to step forward.
Can you ask a question, please?
Why is the Indian government so uncomfortable with opening negotiations and talks with the Pakistani Army in leadership?
Because the Pakistani Army hasn't been elected by anybody to talk to us. I mean, look, if Pakistan wants to undermine its own democracy, that's your business. But we'd still like to believe, that you are a democracy, and that your elected leadership are the ones that the people have empowered to decide for you. The day you decide that actually we're wasting our time talking to your elected leadership and we should just talk to General Sharif, I think his name is, sure, we'll be happy to, but then don't blame us for what happens there. You guys are a democracy. Take pride in it. You should be telling the Americans, why the hell are you talking to the general? Talk to our prime minister. But you seem to be more happy for us to talk to your generals. We actually, for the time being at least, will remain engaged with the elected leadership. The day you decide that you don't want them, another system will take over. We'll talk to them. We talked to your dictators in the past. We'll talk to them again. But honestly, for stability in the region, we'd like that Pakistan remains a stable, functioning democracy, regardless of what your internal problems are.
All right, thank you so much. No, I think that's it. Mr. Abdullah needs to catch a flight.
Thank you all very much. I really enjoyed that. Thanks.